I'm not following you.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Judge. I just want to talk a little bit about the law. Tell me about the war powers clauses in Articles 1 and 2.
Well, Senator, my understanding of the war powers is that the executive maintains significant authority with regard to the war, but that it has to be authorized by Congress.
What do you mean authorized?
Senator, I don't have a more, that issue has not come before me,
Sure.
But I don't have a more specific definition of authorization than that the Congress has to, it's up to the Congress to, to authorize it. I can't say more than that, Senator.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about another issue you'll see if you're confirmed with the 11th Circuit. It's an issue we struggle with every day, and as do the federal courts. Tell me about the non-delegation doctrine.
My understanding, Senator, of the non-delegation doctrine is that Congress should not delegate its powers to other branches of government except in certain limited circumstances.
And what are those limited circumstances?
I believe, based on my understanding, that Congress can, for instance, delegate some of its authority to the executive, such as executive agencies, if that authority is carefully circumscribed.
I'm not following you. The Constitution's pretty clear in Article 1 that the legislative power resides in the United States Congress, and we can't give it away. But your argument is that we can.
Senator, it's my understanding that in certain limited circumstances that are carefully circumscribed, that Congress can delegate some of its authority to.
Okay. What's the guiding principle, though? If we tomorrow, if Congress passed a law and said we're no longer going to confirm judges, we're going to set up a special agency within the executive branch and give that agency the authority to confirm judges. Somebody's going to litigate it. What would be the principle that the court would follow?
Senator, I would certainly, if that issue were to come before me on the 11th Circuit, if I'm fortunate to be confirmed, I would research the Supreme Court's precedent and guidance on that issue and any binding 11th Circuit precedent on the issue, if there is any, and address that issue. But in terms of the hypothetical situation, Senator, I would leave it at that.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Let's set aside what the principle is for a moment. The Supreme Court has been pretty clear what the principle is. It goes back, I don't know, 80 years. But let's suppose, well, strike that. What I'm trying to understand is how you think, Judge. What do you think the principle ought to be? I mean, our founders were very clear that the legislative power is ours, and clearly we've given away that legislative power in some instances to some administrative agencies. What do you think the principle ought to be? Could the Congress just come in one week and said, we're tired, let's just give it all to the president for about 6 months while we go fishing? Would that be constitutional?
Well, certainly, Senator, I think to that extent would unlikely be constitutional based on...
Why do you think?
Based on the the principle that I just stated, that and that you have reiterated, that
Which is the
that
principle.
Congress cannot delegate its authority except in certain circumstances.
And those are?
And those are ones that, Senator, I would not want to speculate about. I can say that I would follow the Supreme Court's guidance on that, and my understanding of that guidance is that those circumstances are very narrow.
Okay. But you're not familiar with the principle.
Senator, to the extent that you're looking for a specific articulation,
Yes, sir.
I would have to look at the case law and follow up
Okay.
on that.
Robert, do you have any questions you want me to ask your dad? You sure? Now's your shot, man. Do you have anything you'd like to say to us, Robert? It's okay. A wise man
I
once
think you had
said
a hello.
nothing.
I think you had a hello for
A
you.
wise man once said nothing. Thank you, Judge.
Senator Blackburn, we'll give you a moment to compose yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Judge Kidd, I want to ask you about U.S. versus Rodriguez-Sanchez. You remember that case?
Senator, the name does not ring a bell, but perhaps
Okay.
the facts might.
All right, this was an illegal immigrant from Mexico, and you ordered him released from federal custody pending trial. And he had quite a criminal history. He had a series of charges, including resisting an officer with violence, 2 charges of domestic violence. He was deported by ICE in 2011, and then at some point, he illegally re-entered the country. Now, in deciding to release this illegal alien, you essentially determined that under the Bail Reform Act, he did not pose a danger to the community. Do you think that crimes of domestic violence are serious enough to impose a danger to the community?
To answer that question, Senator, yes, and I don't recall that specific case, but if this were an illegal reentry case, I would note that it's pretty rare that release is granted in those cases, so I imagine I also would have
Okay.
placed him on house arrest or
Well,
with
he
GPS
was
monitoring.
on an ICE detainer when you decided to release him. And another consideration for deciding whether to release a criminal defendant pending trial is if they pose a flight risk. And how could you possibly argue that an illegal alien with a criminal record was, and they were going to be deported by ICE, that they were not a flight risk?
Senator, in those cases, the question is whether there are any conditions that I could impose that would mitigate any risk of flight. And again, I don't recall that specific one, but generally, if it's...
Would you like to review that and then submit an answer to me in your questions? Because to me, when we're looking at crime that is committed by illegal entrants into this country, this is something that is of tremendous concern to me. Another one that is of concern to me is the article, and Senator Lee mentioned the article to you that deals with child rape laws. And I've done a lot of work working on children that are being trafficked. And the chairman's done a lot of work dealing with child sexual abuse and exploitative material. But the fact that you were listed as having had conversations that shaped an article about capital child rape laws is of concern to me. One of your statements, and I'm going to quote you on this, is that Capital child rape statutes are formed at the nexus of three movements: the popular movement to shame, fear, and isolate sex offenders, the feminist movement for harsher punishment of sexual and intrafamilial violence, and the legal and political movement to punish attacks against vulnerable victims with death. So there's a lot in that. So do you think there is currently a popular movement to shame, fear, and isolate sex offenders?
Senator, that was not my statement.
That was not your statement. It's an article you contributed to, and that is the author stating, and I'm quoting that. That was it. So do you agree with that? Do you think that there is a popular movement to shame, to fear, to isolate sex offenders? Do you think sex offenders are criminals? Or do you see them as victims? Do you think that there is a feminist movement that is pushing for harsher penalties and punishments of sexual and intrafamilial violence?
Senator, as a former prosecutor, I prosecuted many cases involving sex offenses, and I believe that those offenses and those people who commit them should be punished.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it's wrong for the article to advocate for harsher punishments for sexual and intrafamilial incest violence?
Do I think that it's wrong to advocate for harsher
Right.
punishment? Senator, as to the particular policy considerations, I would leave to this body. But again, as a former prosecutor, I did seek significant punishments for those who engaged in those offenses.
Okay, why don't you pull your records and let us know how many conversations you had with the author that shaped the contents of the article. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would you like to clarify that, Judge Kidd? Because I understand your name was mentioned in a footnote to an article which you didn't author, and that's why this line of questioning has arisen.
My understanding, Senator, is that I was listed in the acknowledgement somewhere in the article that was written by my law school classmate. I did not write anything in the article, and I don't adopt any statements in the article. Quite frankly, it's been so long I don't remember what the article is about, aside from what the senators have summarized today.
Thank you. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to the nominee and to your family. I asked the following two questions initially to ascertain the fitness to serve of all of the nominees who come before any of the committees on which I sit. So, Judge Kidd, I ask you, since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
Judge Kidd, the article that my colleague just questioned you, or quoted to you, is from 2007. Does that article have anything to do with your role as a judge or how you would rule as a judge if confirmed?
No, Senator, and I barely remembered that I was mentioned in that article. As I said, we were in law school at the time, and I do know that my classmate published the article. But in terms of any statements therein, they would certainly not affect my consideration as a judge.
Could you repeat how you would decide cases before you?
Senator, I, as a sitting judge, and if I'm nominated to the 11th Circuit, I would approach each case with an open mind. I would consider the issues that are presented from each side fairly. I would thoroughly research those issues, and I would issue a decision that I hope could be understood by the parties involved and the general public, and I would treat the parties with respect.
That is my expectation of judges, that they be fair and objective, apply the law to the facts, and follow relevant precedent. Judge Kidd, as a federal prosecutor and then as a judge, you could not engage in pro bono representation, but you continue to give back to your community by speaking at local schools and volunteering with Bar Association programs. At these engagements, do you focus on a particular message or messages?
No, Senator, at those engagements, I'm mostly explaining the role of the judiciary, explaining the role of a judge. At some of them, there are law students who might be interested in appearing in federal court. I explain federal court to them. Some people are interested in becoming a judge, and I try to shed some light on that process as well. It's really my, I believe that it's my obligation, in a sense, to go out into the community and to provide that sort of education and to be that sort of role model for people who are interested in becoming a judge or a prosecutor or a lawyer.
I note that you have connections to all 3 states in the 11th Circuit. You were born in Alabama, went to college in Georgia, and now live and work in Florida. How has your background prepared you to serve the people who live in the 11th Circuit as an appellate judge?
That's correct, Senator. I have ties to all 3 states, and I'm proud of that. The 11th Circuit is my home circuit, and I believe that each stage of my career has helped me in the preparation for this position. In each job that I've had, I've been a generalist, so if I'm confirmed to the 11th Circuit, I will continue to be a generalist and delving into those issues that are filed in federal court. As a current magistrate judge, I'm assigned to every type of case that gets filed in federal court, and we're one of the largest districts in the country, so we see a lot. So I'm involved in helping the parties as they develop the factual record. We're often referred motions for summary judgment, so I apply the law to the facts as they set forth. We have a large Social Security docket in which we hear appeals from the Social Security Administration, which is the same standard that the 11th Circuit considers. So I think that my career to this point has prepared me for this position.
As a federal prosecutor, you earned the FBI Director's Award for your investigation of a drug trafficking ring in Central Florida. Can you briefly tell the committee about that case and your work on it in the time remaining?
Yes, Senator. I worked with the Federal Bureau of Investigation to investigate a local organization that was committing a number of crimes in Seminole County, which is in Central Florida. And through working with the FBI, we were able to obtain court-ordered wiretaps to infiltrate the organization, and ultimately several individuals were charged in a conspiracy and were ultimately convicted, making what we view as a very positive impact on that community.
And for this, you received recognition for your work, so
That's correct.
good job. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.